자유민주 통통의 의장이신 윤석열 대통령께서는 자유, 평화, 번영의 통일한국, 대한민국이라는 슬로건으로 8.15 통일 도크린에 대한 말씀과 함께 자유 통일 비전 확산과 북한 인권 개선에 앞장서 줄 것을 당부하셨습니다. 오늘 탈북자 지원과 북한의 인권 상황을 개선하기 위한 활동을 지속적으로 펼치며 서울 평화상을 수상하신 북한 인권 개선의 어머니 같은 수잔 솔티 박사님을 모시고 뜻깊은 강연회를 개최하게 된 것은 매우 감사한 일입니다. 이 자리에 계신 모든 분들이 함께 한반도 평화통일의 튼튼한 버팀목이 되어주시기를 부탁드리며 다시 한번 감사드립니다.
아까도 우리 회장님께서 말씀하셨지만 수잔 솔티 박사님의 별명이 북한 인권의 어머니이십니다. 그야말로 지난 30년간 국제사회에서 북한 인권 문제를 지속적으로 제기해왔고 2004년도에 미국 내에서 북한 인권법을 탄생하는 데도 주도적 역할을 하셨습니다. 그리고 이제 지금 실질적으로 탈북자민들을 많이 또 돕고 계시고요. 아마도 이런 또 공로가 인정돼서 또 이제 서울 평화상도 수상하셨던 것 같습니다. 정말 굉장히 또 이렇게 북한 인권 문제에 저명하신 분을 모시게 된 것 같습니다. 아마 잘 아시겠지만 우리 윤석열 정부는 2022년도에 담대한 구상을 발표를 해서 북한 문제에 대한 전격적인 제안을 했습니다. 그리고 얼마 전에 30년 만에 처음으로 우리 통일 도크린을 발표를 했습니다. 자유, 평화, 민주라는 세 가지 원칙 하에서 남북 당국자 간 회담도 제안을 했고 그리고 국제사회에서 통일의 지지를 얻기 위한 국제평화 한반도 포럼도 제안을 했습니다. 하지만 잘 아시겠지만 북한은 지금 두 국가 정권, 그죠? 두 개의 정권으로 맞대응을 하고 있고 최근에 또 우크라이나 전에 파병을 해왔고 그리고 또 미국 대선 직전에 ICBM 장거리 탄도미사일을 발사를 해서 국제 유엔의 안보리 결의를 정면으로 위반하고 한반도 평화의 안정에 저해한 행위를 계속하고 있습니다. 아마 이제 미국 대선이 모두 끝났습니다. 많이들 지금 언론에서 이 트럼프 당선자께서 대선 기간 동안 여러 가지 언급하신 것 때문에 한미 관계는 이제 위기가 오지 않을까라는 많은 예측들을 하고 있습니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 또 이런 새로운 외교 환경의 변화가 우리에게 또 기회를 가져다 줄 것이다 라고 하는 많은 예측들도 하고 있습니다. 한 가지 이 자리에서 여러분께 분명히 말씀드릴 수 있는 것은 어떠한 정권 변화가 오더라도 한미동맹의 굳건한 관계에는 변함이 없을 것이다 라는 말씀을 다시 한번 드리겠습니다. 오늘 수잔 솔티 박사님의 그런 강연이 우리 북한의 인권 문제에 대한 어떤 시각을 넓히고 그런 접근법에 대해서 다양하게 고찰해보는 그런 시간과 동시에 한미관계의 새로운 방향에 대해서도 여러분이 고찰해 볼 수 있는 그런 시간이 되었으면 좋겠습니다.
Protesting their hatred of the United States, but you'll see who they love: Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping. We are seeing these alliances form of pure evil in this world. And this is a photo from last year. When I hosted the first North Korean defectors to testify in the United States back in 1997, their testimonies were so horrific that many people did not believe them. But after another 35,000 North Koreans escaped, their testimonies became irrefutable. So irrefutable that the UN Commission of Inquiry concluded over 10 years ago, in February 2014, that the Kim regime in North Korea was committing, quote, unspeakable atrocities, crimes against humanity that have no parallel in the contemporary world. Now, what are the defectors telling us today? Today, 80% of the people get their food and material goods from the market system that was created by the women of North Korea during the Arduous March. North Koreans no longer believe the regime's lies. They cannot understand why Kim Jong-un is building nuclear weapons while they are starving. So much information has been shared internally that North Koreans know a lot more about the outside world than ever before. They know South Korea is a prosperous nation. This is why, recently, Kim Jong-un has done public executions of teenage males for listening to K-pop music, publicly executing a teenage girl who was distributing South Korean soap operas, and on August 30th, 2 women were tried and executed who had been repatriated by China. Their crime was helping other women escape to South Korea. I think these are all signs that Kim Jong-un is desperate, and he fears that he's losing control over the minds of the North Korean people. In September, North Korea's state media, Rodang Sinmun, published photos of Kim Jong-un visiting a military base, but the photos sparked some debates about whether Kim Jong-un fully trusts his own military, because this time, unlike last March, when he visited a military base, he was surrounded by his bodyguards who were fully armed and ready to shoot. Kim Jong-un is planting landmines at the China-North Korea border to kill people trying to escape. I have never heard of anything quite like that, where landmines are being used to kill people for trying to escape their country. Significantly, Kim recently gave up the 80-year-old policy of unifying the Korean peninsula under the Kim family dictatorship. This is an incredible change of policy. Today, Kim is sending trash balloons to South Korea because of his desperation for what I'm about to show you. He is doing these things to stop the information flow. Kim Jong-un does not care about the people of North Korea, and the people of North Korea are increasingly understanding that horrible fact. The leaflets are crucial in opening up the hearts and minds of North Koreans. In light of what the defectors are telling us, our priorities today should be, number 1, save the North Korean refugees in China. Number 2, put human rights first. And number 3, communicate truth to the people of North Korea through all means possible. For example, Free North Korea Radio broadcasts truth to North Koreans every morning and every evening. Its motto is, "The truth will set them free." It's a partnership between freedom-loving people who finance 100% of the cost of the radio program and North Korean defectors who produce 100% of the programs. It regularly ranks the #1 website in South Korea for information about North Korea, and it's the single most popular hour of broadcasting to North Korea based on surveys of escapees. In addition, last year we aggressively ramped up Operation Truth to finance deliveries to North Korea of the items North Koreans request most. As a result, North Korean defectors, in addition to producing the daily radio broadcast of Free North Korea Radio, have carried out steady engagement projects, balloon, rice, and the newest technique, the water balloon launch. This next slide is slide number 5, is of, I don't know if you recognize this, the Berlin Airlift. But Operation Truth is like the Berlin Airlift, except it's by land, by sea, and by air. You may remember that the Berlin Airlift was carried out specifically to get help to people being starved to death by a communist. This is the head of Kim Jong-un. So shoot it if you can. The North Koreans will live in a strong and unified country if Kim can be removed. Border guards cannot fire on this because they can't deface Kim Jong-un. So these are why the North Korean defectors are using the water balloon to send in these deliveries. Now this slide number 9, this is a rice bottle. I also bought a rice bottle. This is a rice bottle. Each rice bottle contains enough rice to feed a family for a week, plus US $1 bills. A $1 US can feed a family in North Korea for a week. They don't have Bidenomics there. So a US dollar bill will feed a North Korean for a week. It also in here are flash drives full of information and content. Now the content that's in there can range from messages from members of Congress to K-pop music, speeches by President Yoon, gospels and music, and all, current news and information are in the flash drives, which are also in here. There's one of the examples of one of the flash drives. So these are the rice bottles that are being used. And each rice bottle has something else very unique that is the thing that Kim Jong-un fears more than anything. I don't know if you know what that is. Not beyond K-pop. Next guess. The thing he fears more than anything is the Bible. And the North Korean defectors love sending the Bible in. They don't send one of these without putting a Bible in, because the Bible is truth. And North Koreans are learning from the Bible that they're loved and they have value as human beings, and that God's the one that gave them freedom and loved them enough to save them by sending His Son for their salvation. This next video, or the next slide is actually a video. This is an actual rice bottle launch. And if you click on it, it should go. So these are thrown. So that's an actual rice bottle launch. And then water balloons to shortwave radio. These are both very popular. This one we especially send in to women in China who've been victims of trafficking, that were forced to marry Chinese men so they would have some hope, some access to outside information. And then cell phones. Another thing they've been sending in is cell phones, which are especially important to the underground church. Now, for the balloon launches, this next slide is slide 13. This is an example of the leaflets that have been sending in the balloon launches. And these leaflets, in this case, talk about pointing out information about all of the resources that are being spent to develop nuclear weapons, and they're starving to death. So I'm going to tell you about this woman. This is a picture of Kim Ji-young with her family. Ji-young is the one on the right side of the photo with her mother and sisters. Kim Ji-young is on the right. She and her family were once elites living in Pyongyang. But today, she's the director of Free North Korea Radio, a radio station she listened to when she was living in Pyongyang. She listened to Free North Korea Radio. Recently, she was in contact with her relatives, this is just 2 weeks ago, that are still living in North Korea. They warned her that the DPRK state State Security Bureau was closely monitoring her activities. They knew she had traveled to the United States of America for North Korea Freedom Week in July. They knew she was working for Free North Korea Radio. They knew all this because I really loved his policy in the beginning of his first term because I thought that was the right approach. My button's bigger than your button and it works. But, and also, Trump gave the best speech about North Korean human rights of any president, South Korean or American, at the Korean Assembly during his first term. He spoke very eloquently about all the issues, about the political prison camps, about the abductees. I mean, he covered the whole thing. Now, that may have been what led Kim Jong-un to have negotiations with the Trump administration. But when he was talking about exchanging love letters and holding hands, I became physically ill. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that he thinks like a businessman, and we have to remember the video he showed him in Singapore. And I don't know if you've seen it, but the video in Singapore they showed Kim Jong-un was, you can have this, Singapore prosperity, or you can have this, and it was a mushroom cloud. And so I think that, I'm hoping that he will go back to being very hard line on this issue. I wish that he would say to Kim Jong-un, you've been a terrible leader of your people, you're fired. That's what I hope you do. But I think that he will be very respectful of President Yoon's policies, and he understands the importance of the South Korean-US alliance. And I don't think, being the businessman he is, that he's going to get fooled again. Because I really think that he was manipulated by Kim Jong-un. I mean, that's what they do. They do it all the time. And I've seen it again and again and again. They play on our government, our governments. Oh, we'll have negotiations, but all the North Koreans are doing is extracting concessions and aids and trying to get the regime to survive. If we would start looking at the mindset that what the North Korean defectors know, Kim Jong-un does not care about the people, and when you're negotiating with him, he's only negotiating for his own, the salvation of his own regime. He's not doing anything to help their people. But if we can just keep at the forefront that this is, the guy sitting across the table doesn't care about the North Korean people, and you better, when you're negotiating with him, that'll change everything. So I'm hoping that that he'll have that. I mean, I'm encouraged that I think he learned from the developments in the past. And again, I think he'll be very respectful of President Yoon's policy. So that's the first question. The second one is about when will the regime collapse? Tomorrow, I said, tomorrow. It could happen in a couple of hours. No, I really do believe that the people well, there have been times when the people have risen up. And I think that 2009 was one example, which was when there was this huge pushback because the women had created the market system during the Arduous March. And if you remember what happened that time in 2009, Kim Jong-il had to respond because there was this huge outcry and pushback when they devalued the currency because they were trying to reassert control of the markets because they had completely lost control. And they had to step back and say, oh, sorry about that, and they had the guy executed, and Kim Jong-il was like, he did it, it was all his idea, I had nothing to do with that idea. So we've seen that kind of thing happen, and I think that that's what's starting to happen now, and that's why you see these things. So I think it could happen anytime, but that's why we have to be clear about what our desires are, because we have to realize that even the elites in power, who are part of the structure of control, are trapped themselves. And then the third was
와 멋있다. 됐네. 오, 자 하나 둘